Hello, fourth grade. Welcome to our new school year, and this is our social studies textbook and workbook. This book right here that you can see on our screen is the Inquiry Journal. Anytime you hear me say that I'm going to be working in our workbook, this is what I'm talking about. And this is what yours should look like. This is what your textbook should look like. And so whenever I say we're going to be reading from pages of our textbook, this is the book that we're going to refer to. I want to make sure that it's perfectly clear so that way when we're going through it, you understand, especially as we go through the different pages and we're answering different questions, that you know exactly where we're getting the data and information from and exactly what we're reading. So we're going to go ahead and open up our workbook and go to chapter 1. So chapter 1 is the land and people of the United States. We have lesson 1, land and resources, lesson 2, growth of a country, lesson 3, civics and citizenship, lesson 4, money and economics, and then lesson 5, E pluribus unum. So let's go ahead and read, how does America use its strengths and face its challenges? In this chapter, you will explore the different strengths of America's land and the people who live here. You will read about the country's geography, key events in its history, different levels and branches of government, and how the economy works. You will use all of these different views of America to tell what you think is the country's greatest strength in the chapter project. So we'll talk about the chapter project as a separate video, but I wanted to make sure that you understand what we're about to do. Here, we're going to be talking about the geography of different regions inside of this chapter. We're going to look and find cause and effects of different key events in America's history, the differences of the branches of government, basic economic concepts, and how people from different backgrounds and cultures have contributed to our country. The goal of this chapter is that you're going to identify geographic features and use that to analyze regions of the United States. So looking at different ways that the land is formed and how it impacts people living in those areas. You're also going to be explaining the challenges of events in American history and how it shaped the country that we have today. You're going to be defining the powers of federal, state, and local government, describing the elements that make up the economy and how it affects individuals, businesses, and governments. When we talk about the economy, how does the country make money? Money doesn't just appear, right? We have to find different ways to make it, but what types of businesses do we have in the US that allows us to have an economy? You're going to describe or identify ways, traditions of different cultures are celebrated in the United States today, because the United States is a mix of lots of different people from many different backgrounds. And so, what are things that we do as a country in order to celebrate and respect different cultures and different groups? And last but not least, we're going to see if we can create an advertisement promoting America's greatest strength. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, you'll notice on page 4 and 5, you're going to have vocabulary words. I want you first to go through which of these words you know, don't know, or you've heard it. And so our first word here is amendment. Then we have the word colonist, democracy, ethnic, expansion. So I'm going down this way first, and then I'm going up here. We have the word immigrant, import, latitude, longitude, and scarcity. So go ahead and check mark if you know this word, if you've only heard of it, if you don't know it. And it's okay if you've never heard of this word before. It's okay if you already know it. That's even better. We can talk about it, but make sure that you check mark each one of these because you're going to be using your workbook glossary in order for you to find the definitions of these words. And so the glossary is in the back of your book right here. You've got your reference section. And in the next page, so here you're going to find your glossary. It is in alphabetical order. And so you're going to be using this to find the definitions of those words, even if you already know those words. So let's go back to our chapter. So our first word is amendments, and that is a change in wording or meaning, especially in a law, bill, or motion. We have different amendments, that things that we added to our laws as a country because we saw that certain things didn't work or certain things we need to change or fix because the law is constantly changing depending on what the situation is for different country or different parts of the country or different places in our and different communities. And we have the word colonist, and that's a person who takes part in founding a settlement or territory. Then you have democracy, which is a government by the people. Expansion, right here, the act of becoming larger. So the US government had a method of expansion starting from the East Coast to the West Coast. The word ethnic, which means of or relating to groups of people with common traits, customs, and a sense of shared identity. That's where the word ethnicity comes from. They have a shared identity with maybe customs or different traits that are linked to where they're from. We have the word immigrant, which is a person who comes to a country to live there. We have the word import, which is something that was brought into the country. For example, maybe you'll notice that a lot of different things, maybe toys and so on, you'll notice that it says made in China. That is an import, something that we did not make here, we imported it. Then we have the word latitude, which is distance north or south of the equator, measured in degrees. So when we look at a map, and I'll show you what I mean, latitude is going across, but longitude is the distance measured in degrees in east or west from the prime meridian, which is the center. And then we have scarcity, which means something in a very small supply. And so these are words that we're going to be talking about in this chapter, and you'll see them highlighted. And of course, if you see any highlighted words inside of your story or inside of our reading, then that means that you can find it. It'll be highlighted something like this. That means that it's going to be found inside of the glossary in the back. So let's go ahead and get started on our first lesson. All right, so lesson 1 is how does geography define a region? Our essential question is how does America use its strengths and face its challenges? You'll notice that here we have a picture of the globe, and this is a satellite image of Earth from NASA. And while you are going through this page, I want you to observe the lesson outcomes. What is the goal of today? What is the goal of this lesson? We have what am I learning? Why am I learning it? How will I know that I learned it? And so our first part in this lesson, you're going to use your investigative skills to identify important features, parts of map and geographic features of the United States. Here we can see there's North America, South America, and we're going to see how different parts of land affect how people live. Well, why are you learning it? Reading and talking about maps and geographic features will help you learn more about the unique features of the United States. If you understand information about the land, that also helps you understand why things were done in certain ways. So you're going to be explaining aspects of the physical geography of the United States and how it helped geographers divide the United States into different regions. Then we are going to describe renewable and non-renewable resources found in each region and explain the need to conserve natural resources. Why do we care about conserving or taking care of the earth? We're going to describe geographic features, factors that affect where people live, and write a geographical description of your state, detailing the location and ways that it fits in the region. So before we continue, we talked about how there's different regions of the United States. Go ahead and flip over to your table of contents. And yes, this page is also going to be a great little letter from the authors, but here you'll notice that we have all of our lessons. Yes, this is our first chapter, but starting from the second chapter, we have different regions. Chapter 2 will be about the Northeast. Chapter 3 will be about the Southeast. Then we have the Midwest, the Southwest, and these are the essential questions that I'm talking about earlier, or I was talking about earlier. And then last but not least, our last chapter is the West. And so these are the different skills and features we're going to go over as we go through each chapter. But I wanted to go over it and make sure that you know exactly what I mean when I say the different regions. So let's go back to our page. We were on page 6. Oopsie. Chapter 1, Geography Opener. How does geography, geo as in earth, graphy as in the image or drawing or like a map, define a region? So here we're on page 6, and we're going to start with analyzing the source. Before we begin, I want you to look at the inspect portion. Look, inspect the map right here, and read the text. What do you think it'll show? So first think of your prediction, right? Then circle details on the map, in the map, to help you understand how to use it. Then you're going to identify clues that tell you the answers to these questions. How are the lines of latitude and longitude used? What features of the area in the map are labeled? How are directions in the map shown? So our title first, go ahead and underline this, pointing it out with latitude and longitude. I'm going to use blue as my way to underline that. This is a map of North America. It shows lines of latitude and longitude. Latitude lines run side to side. Longitude lines run top to bottom. So latitude is this way, longitude up and down. If you need help remembering, longitude, long. I'm going to add this. There we go. Top to bottom. These lines are the same on every map. Geographers use them to locate a place on Earth. See if you can go ahead and find where we are located on this portion of our map. So as I'm going through, I want you to follow along with your workbook. You can read along on the screen or you can have it open, that's fine. But as I'm reading through, you should also be reading along. We're on our second paragraph. To identify an exact location on the map, find the point where two lines meet. You can name the point with a set of numbers called coordinates. The latitude line is written first. Then the longitude line is written second. We write the numbers in degrees using the degree symbol. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit so that we can see what I'm talking about. So here we go, the degree symbol. Think of temperatures and all of that. We also use the same symbol for degrees. As an example, look for a point where the 30-degree line of latitude intersects with the 90-degree line of longitude. What city is labeled near that coordinate? So now if you're looking over here, I can't really see it because it's very small. So I'm going to go ahead and find it over here. And down here, you'll notice that we have 160 degrees, 150, 140, 30, 20, 10, so on, 90, 80, and so. And then if you notice over here, we have the same thing happening. We have 40, 10, or let's see, we have 20 north, 30 north, and so it keeps going up, 40 north, and so on. Now, they asked you to go ahead and try to locate a city. The coordinates of New Orleans are written at 30 degrees north and 90 degrees west. Using coordinates is one way to find the absolute location on a map. So this is one way that we use geography of the Earth in order for us to understand where things are. Geographers also use the compass rose to identify one location relative to another. Let me go ahead and zoom out. A compass rose is this right here. Okay. Compass rose indicates the four directions: north, south, east, and west. For example, Phoenix, Arizona is south of Salt Lake City, Utah. So here we can see there's Phoenix, Salt Lake City is right there. So this is south of Salt Lake City. The map shows the distance between 2 points on the map scale shows the distance between 2 points on the map in relation to the actual distance on Earth. This is the map scale. You'll notice that it goes 0, 400, and then 800 kilometers. If you measure inside of your book within that range, so for example, if you go here 0 to 800, anywhere that you see that has that same measurement, that's the distance between those points. So for example, if I take this measurement right here and I apply it here, okay, well, I know that this is pretty close to 800 kilometers. Maybe I take that next one and I move it there. Okay, this is probably close to 800 kilometers. And this gives me a rough idea about different parts of the US. And of course, as maps in general, but it helps me understand exactly how wide or how long certain parts of the country are. Because, of course, this is not a one-to-one scale because this is a map, it's a drawing. Let's see, according to the scale, Phoenix is about 600 miles from Salt Lake City. So here we can see Phoenix. And so, yes, while everyone else is using kilometers, we are using miles. And so here we can see that it's a little more than 400, but it's not as much as 800 miles. So it's somewhere in between 400 and 800. And right there in the middle would be 600. So it's about 600 miles. So now go ahead and try to underline the clues that are answering these questions. Make sure you circle the details on the map and that help you understand how to use it. Maybe you're circling things that are talking about latitude. Maybe you're circling things that talk about longitude. Maybe you're circling things that are talking about a compass rose and how those are all meant to help you understand how to read a map. So I want you to think about if you've ever visited another part of the United States. Have you ever read a story about someone who's lived in another part of the United States? Because that will help you remember that these things that we're reading right now inside of our textbook or inside of our workbook, I should say, are directly connected to what you're learning. When you are thinking about where you've been inside the US, maybe you've been to somewhere on the West Coast, maybe you've been to somewhere on the East Coast. But as you're thinking about that place and you're learning about this at the same time, this will help you remember it and, of course, use that information. Now, if you look at a road map, you'll be able to understand it a little bit better. Down here, it says find evidence. It says look again. Why do you think latitude and longitude have been helpful to geographers? Why would that seem important? Here, you're going to highlight. When it says highlight, you don't actually have to use a highlighter. What you can actually do is just underline it. It says highlight the lines of latitude and longitude that pass through the United States. So you'll see here, we have one line that goes through, another line, another one, another one, another one, and then over there. So you can just use your pencil. So remember, we've got latitude going this way, right? And then longitude going up and down. Okay. So before we continue, I have a fun fact for you about how seafaring people, people who traveled by sea, developed the ideas of latitude and longitude as a way to help them plan sailing routes to reach specific locations because they didn't always have maps of where they're traveling to. About 2,600 years ago, the Phoenicians, an ancient Middle Eastern civilization, calculated latitude by using the positions of the stars, which is why constellations, if you can figure out different constellations in different times of year, that can help you find yourself if you're lost. Positions of the stars in relation to Earth. Longitude was harder to work out. It required a precise clock and the understanding of time differences between locations. A reliable method for calculating longitude was not fully established until the 1760s. So before we continue, I want you to think if you would use a compass to calculate latitude and longitude. Well, since we know that a compass is going to give us north, south, east, and west, a compass wouldn't really help us find the latitude or longitude, but it will help us find where the direction that we're going in. Let's go ahead and continue to our next page. So this is your workbook, the first part that you're going to be answering. We are going to talk about main idea and details, but when you are submitting your work, you're going to make sure that this is complete as well as this, here, and here. Make sure that you are using complete sentences. You should have at least 4 sentences for these written parts. So before we continue, I want to make sure that you understand that that other page needs to be having at least 4 sentences for each part. And you're going to be using the details from this page and this page after we're done with our reading to help you answer questions on the next 2. So this is going to be where you're taking your notes. This is where we're going to be practicing it. And then you're going to go ahead and complete this part on your own. So the main thing that we're going to be working on today is explore main idea and details. The main idea is the most important point that the author presents. So let's go ahead and underline that. The details are the main point that support the main idea. So for example, if I'm talking about how there's latitude and longitude, how we have a compass rose, how there's different features of the map and so on. The main thing that I'm talking about is maps. And so if you notice that someone is using details talking about the same subject again and again and again, that means that they're giving you details about a main idea. The main idea you have to figure out. So to find the main idea, look at the map and read the text all the way through. So you can go ahead and pause the video here, go back and check it out. This will help you understand what the page is about. Look at the map and pay attention to all the symbols and labels. Do the symbols and labels help you understand the text? Number 3, reread the text. Look for information that supports the main idea. Is there a connection between the map and the text? Ask yourself, what information helps me identify and describe locations on a map? And then down here, it says based on the map you analyze and the text you read. I know technically you're working online, but you can still complete the chart below. You're going to tell me what the main idea is and the detail that proves that that is the main idea. So maybe you wanted to talk about how, the main thing that we were repeating again and again. And again, if you need to pause the video here, go right ahead, reread that text, go through it. Once you're done, come back and we'll continue talking about it. All right, so if you're back, maybe you wanted to talk about how latitude and longitude were something that was mentioned inside of the text. But that wasn't the only feature that the text was talking about. Yes, that was in the main title, but we also talked about a compass rose. We also talked about different features of a map. And so maybe you want to talk about latitude and longitude, how they're features of a map that help you find your location. They're describing where a location is on the map. Well, how do you know that that's your main idea? Well, we have proof. You can't just say that this is the main idea and then not provide evidence. Well, the evidence is that when we look at the latitude lines that run across the map and the longitude lines that go up and down, that was one of the details that they gave us. We also talked about different aspects of the map, such as compass rose, such as the scale that gave us an idea for how long that map was, or sorry, the distances on the map. So if you want to use that as your explanation, as your detail, go right ahead. But make sure that you are very clear in your proof, in your evidence. So here, I'm going to go ahead and use my detail or I have my main idea up here. I'm going to say how longitude, let me see if I can make this a little bit smaller. Oh no. Yeah. So I don't have much space to write here, but you can go ahead and explain longitude and latitude. Longitude and latitude lines with other features not to find locations. And so I'm using this as my main idea. But how do I prove that this is true? Well, now I'm going to go ahead and provide my evidence. My evidence that this is what they were talking about is that we talked about latitude and longitude in the text. They mention, or let's use it. It mentions the compass rose, the let's see, the scale, and the latitude, longitude lines as ways to read and locate things on a map. So let me go ahead and use this to move those around. I know this is a little messy right now, but here we have our first main idea, and you're going to fit that in with yours. And then here we have our detail. And so you're going to be doing the exact same thing, but now you're going to be reading pages 8 through 17 to find what is the main idea of those pages and what's your proof? What's your evidence? You need to find at least 4 sentences and rewrite them in your own words that prove that that main idea is true. So we're going to go ahead and go through our text and read through it and use this area as a way to keep track of your notes. I'm going to go ahead and clear this off so that way I can get started on our textbook. So again, this is our textbook. We're going to go ahead and open up from page. Let's go to chapter 1. How does geography define the region? And so here we have our timeline. Here we have our map of the United States. In this chapter, you'll read about the regions of the United States and the people who live here. You'll think about both the similarities and differences in America's geography, economy, and culture. You will discover the impact of growth and challenges throughout American history. You will also consider how being united in ideas will prepare the United States for the future. So I want you to go ahead and observe anything that you notice over here on the number line. And I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that we can see it. And so if you need to pause the video here, go ahead so that we can look at that. And so on the top, you'll notice that we're talking about the Americas. On the bottom, we're talking about the world events that are occurring at the same time. So here, step into the time. What was happening in North America at about the same time as Sir Francis Drake was sailing around the world? If you've ever played the video game Uncharted, this is Sir Francis Drake that they mention inside of that inside of that video game. And I'm going to go ahead to the next page so that way you can look at it on continuation. 1607, 1776, 1865, 1969, here 1644, 1789. So these are all happening at the same time. If you need to think of it as a timeline or as a multiverse, two things were happening completely isolated from each other, usually. But as we interacted more with different cultures and different places, we started to mix. And so it wasn't until European and other countries or other groups started to interact with with North America that we started to mix more, because otherwise it was very separated. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So here we have lesson 1, land and resources, lesson 2, growth of a country, lesson 3, civics and citizenship, lesson 4, money and economics, and then of course lesson 5, e pluribus unum. You'll see that on a coin, and I want you to try to figure out what that means. All right, let's get started on our page. So here we can see a map of the United States. You can go ahead, I'm going to zoom out for a second. You can go ahead and read through these pages on your own, because we have different important people in the United States from our history. And now we're going to get started on lesson 1, how does geography define a region? So I want you to observe what you notice happening in this picture. Go ahead and read the caption on the bottom as you're listening along. When you are reading or when you're listening to this video, make sure that you're pointing at it in your textbook, so that way you're connecting what you're listening to as well as what you're reading by physically touching the book. All right, so using geography. Geographers often analyze countries large and small by using their unique features, things that are different. They examine physical features like landforms, climate, and natural resources. They also examine human features such as population and economy. The United States is one of the largest countries in the world, with at more than 3.7 million square miles. A trip from Maine in the northeast to Hawaii in the west will cover 5,000 miles. A trip from the top of Minnesota to the bottom of Texas is about 1,700 miles. So here, 1,700 miles. Because of its vast size, dividing the United States into smaller regions can help you better understand the great diversity, the many things that are different in the country's geography. To look at physical and human features of an area, geographers make and use different kinds of maps, political maps, physical maps, and informational maps to show geographic data. Other tools geographers use include satellite images, globes, and even charts and graphs. So here, the globe is one representation of Earth, but we have other maps that show the same pieces of information. So, United States regions. Like latitude and longitude, the regions, let me get my little glowy tool, divide a place into smaller units. The United States can be divided into 5 main regions made up of states with common features. These regions are the Northeast, the Southeast, the Midwest, the Southwest, and the West. Environment and people all play a part in shaping a region. Landforms and natural resources make the region's environment different from other areas. In addition, the ways that people use and change the land can impact a region. Location can influence a region, as can the ways people earn a living. A region's history can also make it different from other regions. Finally, the people living in a region um, help to form its unique culture. So a person that lives in the might have different land features and might be dealing with different environmental issues than a person living in the West. Or a person who's living in the South might have different things that they're dealing with than someone living in the North. And so because the land is different, because the environment, the temperature, even the time to a certain degree is different, we will, despite being in the same country, we deal with different things. Over here, Alaska and Hawaii lie in the West region, but are unique in their own ways. Neither state connects to the other state. So here, Alaska is actually connected to Canada. It's still part of North America, of course. But right here, the part that's missing is actually Canada. Hawaii is an island, archipelago. So they are completely disconnected. Some people call all the states besides Alaska and Hawaii the lower 48 states. Alaska is often considered part of what is called the continental United States because it connects to the North American continent. Alaska is our northernmost state, reaching all the way up to the Arctic Circle. And we actually, fun fact, bought Alaska from Russia. I can't remember the exact year, but we bought it from them, and that's why it is isolated all the way up north. Hawaii is not part of the continental United States because it lies entirely in the Pacific Ocean. Hawaii lies about 2,500 miles southwest of California. Because of the curve of California's coastline, Hawaii is actually closer to San Francisco than San Diego. So here's where San Diego is, and then Hawaii, the location would be somewhere along here because of the curve of the Earth. So here we have an image of the Alaskan coast. Here we have an image of the Hawaiian coast, but again, both of these part of the continental United States. Very different environments, of course, very different temperatures, climates, and so on. So here's a fun fact. Did you know the sun shining on the Earth as it turns gives us 24 time zones? These are areas that share the same clock time. When it's noon in Florida, it's 9 o'clock in the morning in California. Because if it is the daylight is starting again from the east, right? When the sun rises over here, it's still dark on this side. So as it gets to middle of the day, noon, that means that the sun is starting to reach over there, the sunlight, when I say the sun. All right, our next subheading says landforms and waterways. Landforms are physical features of the Earth's surface, such as mountains, canyons, or plains. So we've got many different types of landforms, and you'll see this is on a physical map of the United States. You'll see there's different textures and drawings and colors to show the different features. Waterways are bodies of water that you can travel on, such as rivers, harbors, lakes, and oceans. Landforms and waterways can be small and local, like one solitary hill or one lake. Others can be a key feature of a region. like the Mississippi Delta down here, um, in the southeast region. Still, others can cross multiple regions, like the Great Plains. You'll see that it crosses from the Midwest in the northern part all the way down to the southwest. Sorry, southeast. Um, the Great Plains in the Midwest, West, and Southwest regions. Geographers study landforms and waterways that make up a region. Maps and serial photographs help geographers identify and describe them by different sizes and shapes. So here we can see an image of the Great Plains from a person's point of view. The area is that it's flat, dry plains covered in grasses as far as the eye can see. And it's why this area of the United States is usually called America's breadbasket. We grow a lot of grain in this area because we have lots of flat land. If you notice over here, there's a lot of different textures. This makes it very difficult for people to farm on in comparison to this flat area that has a lot of rivers going through it. The Mississippi Delta, like the one we talked about here, is seen from the sky. This is an image. The water from the Mississippi fans out to meet the Gulf of Mexico. So down here, up Mississippi, going down. Actually, let me zoom in a little bit so it's a bit easier to see. Okay, so we've got the Mississippi River. As you can see, it combines with the Missouri River and the Ohio River, and so it becomes the longer Mississippi River. And down here is where the Mississippi Delta is. So this is a physical map of the United States. Again, pay attention to the compass rose, the scale. Of course, Canada's here, Mexico's down there. We've got the Gulf of Mexico underneath, next to Florida. We have the Pacific Ocean. We have different features like here. The coastal range. So we've got mountains along here. That's why it's all bumpy. The Cascade Range, the Great Basin, the Mojave Desert, Columbia Plateau. I mean, it's slightly elevated. We've got different rivers, the Rocky Mountains, the Black Hills, which is where the um, Mount Rushmore and all of that is, Missouri River, the Great Plains, Central Plains. Here we have the Appalachian Mountain regions, which is actually thousands, if not millions of years old. Here we have the East Coast and the Gulf Coastal Plain, the Atlantic Coastal Plain, and of course, here's the Atlantic Ocean, here's Chesapeake Bay, and other important features. Here you'll see that this thin line is a country boundary. So for example, right here, that's a thin line that's separating the two countries. These light gray lines are different states. So like here, so on, states. And then here we have a continental divide. And so this is where it splits through the continent. Let's go ahead and zoom out and we can continue on the next page. Our next subheading says climate. Geographers use climate to describe regions. Climate is the pattern of weather over a long period of time. The weather within a region can be very different. For example, on the same day in December, it can be sunny and warm near the ocean, but freezing with snow on the top of a mountain 200 miles away. Climate varies because the beach and the mountains are in different climate zones. A climate zone shares similar temperatures, amounts of precipitation like rain, snow, and so on, and other factors. Temperature is a measure of how hot or cold a place is. Precipitation is rain or snow. A region's climate depends on its geography. Places closer to the equator are warmer, so the southeast and southwest are warmer than the northeast and midwest. Elevation also affects climate. Places in the mountains are cooler than places at a lower elevation of the same latitude. Places near large bodies of water, like the Great Lakes or an ocean, also influences weather patterns and climates. The United States has many different climate types, from polar climates with long cold winters to warm and wet tropical climates with many climate types in between. See the United States climate map at the back of the book. The West and the Southwest regions have a wide variety of climate types. Citizens in the Northeast, the Southeast, and Midwest have far fewer climate types. Let's take a second and go ahead and look at our reference section. Let's go to our geography handbook. And let's see if we can find our map. So here we have different features when we talk about different parts of the land. And we have all of our definitions, like the mouth of a river. What does that mean? Well, go look at number 16. Oh, it's the place where it opens. We have a canal. We have all of these different features, but let's go ahead Let's see if we can find, got our physical map. Okay. And here's our political map. And here's our climate map. So you'll notice that here we've got dark red for the tropical down here, desert over here. We've got dry with this lighter orange. We've got actually let me zoom in a little bit. Mild seasons all along this darker orange, humid summers and mild winters all over here. This part is humid summers and cold winters up north. This gray area is cold to cold mountains. This blue area, where we at? Long cold winters and short summers. And you'll see that some regions do not have any variation because of their location. And then over here we have the vegetation map. So different things that grow in different environments. And so let's go ahead and get back to our reading. Okay. Natural resources. This is our next subheading. So remember, as we're going through, if at any point you notice that you figure out what the details are all talking about, and you want to write the main idea, go right ahead. You can pause this video as you need to and fill in the details that prove that that statement is true right here inside of your book, of course. Natural resources. People cannot make natural resources. Natural resources come from the environment. Natural resources include plants, animals, water, and more. Natural resources can be renewable or non-renewable. Renewable resources can be replenished or built up again. For example, lumber, that's trees and wood, and wheat are renewable resources. As long as we don't use them too quickly, we can grow those again. Non-renewable resources take millions of years to form and cannot be replenished. Minerals, coal, and oil are examples of non-renewable resources. So if you ever hear in the news when they're talking about how we need new renewable resources, it's because when we use non-renewable resources, it can damage the environment. And also it's very difficult to get a lot of it because it takes such a long time it takes, as it said, millions of years to form oil, coal, and so on. Regions have both similar and unique natural resources. All regions produce crops. Citrus fruits, though, grow in warmer climates like Florida, Texas, and Arizona, and California, while the Midwest produces the most corn. Oil production varies across regions, with Texas and the Gulf of Mexico, North Dakota, Alaska, and California producing the most oil in 2017. So here we have an image of, this is a oil mining faculty or facility, and they are pumping oil out of the ground that we use for gasoline, that we use for plastic, that we use for lots of different things. And here we can see that they are chopping down trees, using that wood to make paper, to make houses, to make lots of different things. Economic regions. Geographers often describe a region by its economy. An economy is a system of producing and selling goods and services. An economy helps people in every region earn a living. People need a way to buy things that they need and to sell things that they make. People can buy items such as food or cars, or they can buy services such as a math tutor or a babysitter. So we use money for lots of different reasons. Economics of regions have similarities and differences. Banking and the federal government play a key role in the economy of the Northeast. People in the Southeast earn their wages in agriculture, manufacturing, cars, and drilling for oil. Many people in the Midwest depend on agriculture and manufacturing to earn a living. Places in the Southwest have rich oil, silver, and copper deposits, that means underneath the ground, making oil drilling and mining important to the economy there. Technology companies, the international trade, and tourism help drive the economy of the West. Economics vary within region too. A large city may have a diverse economy, while a small town may rely on 1 to 2 key businesses. Cities near water have certain industries, not found in landlocked towns. So if you live in an area by the water, of course, you're going to have the ability to use the water nearby as a resource. So if you think about fishing, if you think about even tourism with boats, if you think about traveling by water, all of those can boost the economy. Here we have populations. Geography can be used to study a population. To study population, landforms and waterways, resources, climate, and economics all play a role in where people live. One key resource that impacts population is water. People use water for drinking, agriculture, transportation, and manufacturing. So large cities are often located near bodies of water. Even when you eventually get to world history, you'll notice that many civilizations started where there was water because all humans need water in order to survive. Let's go ahead and continue. Warm weather, and a good economy can also draw people to a city, helping it grow and thrive. Look at the population chart below. Find these cities on a physical and climate maps. Think about what geographic factors have caused these cities to grow. So here we can see the top 10 cities in the US according to 2016. And so using this data chart, we can look and see that San Jose had about 1 million because it stops right there at the one line. But New York had about 8.5, maybe 8.2 million. I can't necessarily say if it's exactly at the halfway point, but inside this city of the United States. Here we have Los Angeles with almost 4 million, Chicago with almost 3, Houston with a little over 2, Phoenix with maybe 1.5 or 1.75, Philadelphia with 1 million, San Antonio with 1 million, about a little more over with Philadelphia, San Diego close or over 1 million, Dallas over 1 million. And so again, this is in 2016. So that is the end of our reading. Our next lesson will be talking about how America stayed united through growth and challenges. But let's go ahead and get back to our workbook pages. So here we had to find a main idea. And the main thing that we were talking about inside of our text, see if you can go through the pages and realize what was the main thing that we kept repeating about over and over again. Were we only talking about one region? Were we only talking about the West Coast? Were we only talking about the East Coast? Or did you notice that we were talking about the whole United States? If we're talking about the whole United States, were we sticking to one region or were we talking about multiple regions? Well, you'll notice that we talked about all of these different regions. We have the West, we have the Midwest, we've got the Southeast, we've got the Northeast, we've got the southern part of the United States as well. So all of these different regions were things that we talked about. And so, well, how do I prove that that's what we were talking about? Well, now when we go through our reading, see if you can find any details that show that you can describe the US regions in different ways. Maybe you want to talk about the climate. Maybe you want to talk about the different landforms that affect the region. Maybe you want to talk about how there's different natural resources, how we grow different things in different areas, or how we do business in different areas. So go ahead and fill out your main idea, your details that support it, and make sure that you rewrite them in your own sentences. Complete and neat work. If it is messy, it will not be graded and you will not be given points for that. On the next page, you're going to be describing your states and you're going to be using at least 4 sentences to explain. Think like a geographer, a person who's making a map, okay? Or a person who's studying the earth to define your states. First, of course, my state is, and then describe the state and its location in at least 3 different ways, which means that you're going to tell me about its location. Is it in the Northeast, the Southeast, the Midwest, the West? Okay. You're going to tell me what's special about your state. Maybe you want to talk about the landforms, the climate, the natural resources, the economy, or even the population. Okay. But you need to give me at least 4 sentences for this description. So yes, it says at least 3 different ways, but I want at least 4 sentences to describe your state. Here it says create a poster. I'm not asking you to create a poster yet, but I want you to think about if you were to create a poster, right? Write a paragraph describing how your state contributes to the strength of the United States. How does your state help the United States stay strong? What does it give to the United States that allows it to be able to do business with other countries, that allows it to exist? So tell me what's special about your state. And remember, you need to research and find out which region is my state in. If your region is the Northeast, what are features of the Northeast? If your region is the Southwest, what features are important in the regions of the Southwest? Maybe you guys get oil, maybe you guys get minerals, maybe you guys get fruits or different agriculture. Tell me what's special about your state with at least 4 sentences explaining why that is important. If you're talking about minerals or different non-renewable resources, we use that to make energy. Maybe you're talking about fruits, veggies. People eat that, of course, but give me at least 4 sentences. That is the end of our lesson for 1.1. I will see you in our next video. Don't forget to upload your work to Google Classroom as soon as you're done, and make sure that you're using complete and neat sentences. I'll see you in our next video.